simple way. And that's just get to know you a little bit. And I ask a stupid question of everybody that comes on. It doesn't matter if they're a big celebrity or the lowliest peon on the planet. The question I have is, do you believe in ghosts? It's my question of the week.
Do I believe in ghosts? I believe that I haven't really termed them as ghosts, but I believe that there are energies and there's consciousness outside of ourselves in these physical bodies.
The physics approach.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you could call that a ghost, not necessarily in the cartoon fashion, but there are energies that are outside of this. I believe that our journey is more than just our physical body, and that we are, an energetic being, and they've actually measured energy from our heart out 8 feet in front of us. So it's obvious that there is something else going on, and we can only see a very small percentage of all of the energy and all of the colors available. So for us to say that what we see is what is real is, I think, a little presumptuous.
That makes sense. I like that you actually gave a thought out answer there. Some people are just straight up, no, I don't believe in ghosts. But it's weird to say something like that. But the general population, I think something like 51% say they believe in something like ghosts. So it's a pretty good percentage. So you're a coach, and I've had a few coaches on in the past, and you've also been an executive from what you told me earlier, and an actor. Can you tell my viewers about yourself, about what you do, and more importantly than that, why you do it? Because that's the most important part, the why.
Sure. I work with people who have gotten to a point in their lives where they see that what they've been taught or what they believed has not led them to a place of fulfillment and the happiness that they sought. And sometimes that is because they consciously bought the external sales job that's been done by the industry that I'm in, or I used to be in, which is advertising. Or they've kind of created their own belief system around that hasn't been really aligned to their heart. And what I discovered in my journey was the longest journey that I would ever take would be from my head to my heart. And as a business person and executive in the business world and advertising, I had found that over time I had traveled up into my head and I had lost the trail back. And what's interesting is that the business world does reward you quite well financially the longer that you live in your head. And there are pockets within business that are starting to wake up and reward you, from creating from your heart, because then in that particular case, it's more about everybody winning, the planet winning, when you're in your head, it's about what's in my column. Doesn't matter what's in anybody else's column, but what's in my column.
That makes sense. And by that, I mean, or I would assume you mean that in your head, number one, it's working basically to further the companies or the organization's ends versus necessarily even your own, correct? And versus the world's. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Or, and sometimes it's just as subtle or simple as, having lost the dialogue between your heart and yourself.
Okay.
And we live in a world that's highly distracted and encourages us to be distracted and to live in our head. And so as a culture, our attention span has dropped more and more and more. And our attention is critical and important to having a powerful life. And it's critical and important to the world in general. I mean, it is the currency of what we create with. We literally, in the media, it's called, or in the world of relationships, it's called pay attention, right?
Yep.
You're giving your most valuable asset. It doesn't really ultimately matter, what you bought for somebody or what you did or da-da-da. It's really about and that comes from paying attention. If it comes from paying attention, there's a difference. If you're just buying off, dealing with something, that's very different. But when you're paying attention to somebody, they feel it. They feel seen. They feel heard. And that's the most powerful thing that you can give to somebody on this planet. And as we see culturally, what happens when people feel that they're not seen and heard, and that's legitimate.
That makes sense. When I do apologize for my daughter in the background as well. You probably heard her, but
I didn't. That's great though.
Yeah. I'm going to pay attention to her for 30 seconds. I do apologize. Bridget, can you get Addison to help you, please? Okay, you can come down if you sit on the couch, okay? I do apologize. She's 3. Big sister's supposed to look after her during work time, but it doesn't always work that way. When you are, a lot of what you talk about is active listening just now, and actually understanding who the person is that you're talking to.
Right.
Is there some tips you can give people to actually do that versus being in their own heads all the time? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There are definitely things that I can share, and I would say that an important book for people to read that I would recommend that would give you a lot of different ways of approaching this from your heart is Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication. That really gives you a way of looking at communication from a completely different standpoint. Whereas, in the old school, and how I used to approach it too, was you said this, so I say this. It's back and forth. It's literally like a tennis match, as opposed to, well, why did you hit this over here? Why are you upset? You're obviously protesting for a reason. Why are you upset? Instead of, oh, you're protesting, so we have to shut it down. That's our reaction to your reaction. Right? That's what escalates. That's what we're seeing on a global level, and that happens on a personal level too. And so really what needs to happen on a global level and on a personal level is there is a group, and there are people that need to be heard, that have not been heard and have not had their hearts held, and have not had, and there's a difference between, oh, I hear you, and go, let's go back to normal, whatever normal was, because normal didn't work. But hearing is like our hearts connect, and we're going to do something about what's causing you pain. Because ultimately, when you're in pain, we're all in pain, and that's quite obvious. And that pain for the collective was there even before all of this has been happening. And this is just a visualization of what's been actually happening under the surface for our brothers and sisters who are colored. And also it's been structurally in the system. And, it's needed to be addressed, and people need to be heard. And that happens on an individual level too. That's the communication that needs to happen. When somebody's upset, instead of, and they say something to you. So here's a simple one. I love this little phrase. So a complaint is just a poorly worded request.
Yeah.
Right? I can't believe you're leaving the door open. Da, da, da. Oh, you want me to close the door, right? Instead of, why do you always nag at me? Da, 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 right? There's 2 different ways of approaching it, right? I'm going to listen here, and I'm not really going to hear you, or I'm going to hear what you're trying to say and what's in your heart. And maybe you're expressing it in the way that you are triggered to express it for whatever reason. Maybe I haven't listened before and I need to. But that's what I think that people, and how people need to listen. I tend to call it deep listening, because it's deeper, right? You're listening from a deep place in your body as opposed to just through your ears.
I like that. I think when it comes down to coaching people, I'm going to ask you questions about your coaching now. When it comes down to coaching people, what are really the first steps that you take to be able to help them help themselves? Because that's what coaching is really all about, right? It's not necessarily do this, do this, do this. It's I'm going to coach you and help you do it, but you're ultimately going to have to do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I will help people as much as they want to be helped and as much as they show up. But the reality is, it's each one of our personal journeys, and we're just walking each other home. And so whether we decide to do the journey on this lifetime or another lifetime, or a later, or whatever that is, that's still ultimately our journey. So I'm here as a coach to listen to people in ways they've never been heard before, to listen to how they're speaking, how they're creating the world, what their belief system is, which has gotten them to where they are. And that is a place of lack of fulfillment, things maybe overwhelm, feeling disconnected from the people around them. Those types of things start to show up as the distance becomes greater from who they are to what they've created of who they are, their identity, right? The further that distance becomes, the greater the pain is. And that on some level is what we're seeing on a cultural level, but you also feel that on an individual level. The further away that you get, the more that vacuum starts to really hurt. And so I will give people the tools initially to start listening to themselves in ways that they haven't listened to themselves. That's the first most important thing, because transformation and change, transformation, which we're talking about, the way that you are and who you are being, that type of change first starts with an awareness of what you have been doing to become this person that you are right now. And so you need to start listening to, what am I saying? What are my scripts that I'm using? How am I reacting versus responding? How am I, what am I using as a thought process to become overwhelmed versus actually becoming the eye of the storm? Because there's a lot of chaos around us, and there is, on different there always has been on different levels, where there's just been distractions, or in this particular case, a lot of the things that are happening. But, we can get to a place where we are in a grounded, centered place of power. And when you're there, you can start to see, oh, this is, what's gotten me here, and this is how I can get out of it. And you can also start to think clearly. When people are in a state of lack of fulfillment, overwhelm, stress, your brain power, your IQ drops 30-40%.
Yeah.
So that's not, so I have to get people back to zero, back to a place where they are in their power, where they can think clearly, where they can start to attune with awareness to how they're speaking to themselves externally and internally, and what they're doing to create the life that they have, so that they can start to own that power, and then shift to create the life that they really, really desire and that their heart wants. And that may be that, that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, I sold my house, I sold all my stuff, I'm putting on a robe, and I'm moving to a hill in the Himalayas. You can still have the same family, the same job, the same thing, but the internal part of you shifts, and every part around you starts to shift, and your experience of everything starts to shift. And that's where you can take your power back.
So I guess a good example of this is, you still there? Awesome.
Yeah.
Me personally, I am a comedy stage hypnotist. That's my job in real life past this whole show thing. And right now, with COVID happening, I have no way to actualize that part of me other than this podcast. I'm an entertainer. And that's a deep part of me. It will never, ever be gone. And it's who I am as far as my work goes. How do you help people who can't actualize themselves yet because of their external surroundings? Do you get that?
Well, let me answer it and then see if we come to the same place. So okay. The work that I do is irregardless of the external circumstances.
Okay.
So in other words, you don't have to be in any particular external circumstances. You're actually working with me because the internal experience of whatever is going on is not, feels like it's not resonant. and in that lack of resonance, you're too far away from joy, from your center. You're over in a place of anxiety. You're in a place of confusion, a place of stress, and a place of sometimes in a place of numbness. It's irregardless of where somebody is, and by shifting internally, you can even start to think more creatively. Oh, well, what can I do? Maybe there's something else that I can do that will express what I want. And maybe that has revenue streams to it. Maybe that has connections to other people who help collaborate, who create something greater. You know, what happens in the center, in the eye of the storm that people need to go to, like the center in our heart, that's where creativity is. That's where courage is. That's where inspiration is. Not necessarily motivation, the inspiration, right? So the kind of thing where you find the passion. You're like, oh, okay, I used to do this, and this other thing is just lighting me up. And the more lit up you are, the more it magnetizes opportunities, collaborations, finances, love.
That makes sense. For years, I was a very downtrodden person. I grew up on welfare, and I'm going to tell about my story and stuff just so you understand it, and anybody who's watching can understand this. But I grew up on welfare, very poor, crapped outside in like an outhouse, and just very poor. And for the first, until I was about 23, I thought I was garbage. I thought I was just going to be another statistic, until I finally changed my mindset to say, no, I'm just as good as anyone else, and I deserve to change my life and be better than that. And through doing that for myself, it sent a message to the energies we talked about to begin with, right? It sent a message out to the universe and started creating opportunity for me. Right. And it really did, which is why I started the career that I did. And I think what you're really talking about is that internal change from you say that the still place, the place of inspiration is that eye of the storm, but the rest of it, the storm is chaos. It's fear, it's judgment, it's caring what other people think, and it's the world's pressures on a person to be a specific way, and that headway that you spoke about before, right? So if you could give the watchers and the listeners one specific tip just to get started on that journey that you're talking about, to get back to the heart, what's that one specific thing that you can give them?
Yeah. The thing that I would tell you where an enormous amount of freedom comes from is the acceptance of your feelings. Okay. And acknowledging whatever you're feeling, because what also happens in getting to that center where the creativity is and where your power is, we have a lot of thoughts that go through our heads, and the thoughts tend to be correlated to the emotions that we have not processed. And also, body aches, and there's a lot of things physically that can happen from not processing emotions, but that can also play out in the thoughts. I hear your beautiful daughter.
Yeah. You need to go, Daddy. I do apologize for my little one.
Oh no, it's awesome.
You're actually only the second person who's seen any of my children in about 100 videos, so I do apologize.
That's okay. Tell her I say, what's her name again?
Bridget. I will come upstairs in 10 minutes, okay?
She wants to eat the cake.
You can't eat it.
She's a bowl full of energy.
She is. I baked a cake, like I told you before, I baked a cake just before the show, so I do apologize that she comes out. Yeah.
That's okay.
She's waiting for that cake like you wouldn't believe. She's not controlling the chaos around her. So that one tip, I do apologize for the interruption. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
We're all working from home.
Yeah.
What can you do, right?
Totally. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, really resistance to emotions and resistance to the current moment, whatever is experienced around you. The resistance to the emotions can start to create that the thoughts running through your head on a consistent basis. The resistance to the current moment can start to create anger, frustration, and can slow down the transition to where you would like to take the current moment. Right? So it's hard to change something when you're busy fighting it and say, and as opposed to, let's just create something that I want, as opposed to just fighting the same thing. So the biggest thing that I would say is a point of acceptance, so that you can
Okay.
integrate it as a human. And I think, and again, I keep coming back to that because I think it's part of it, it's reflection of it. But I think on some level, you know, there is resistance to the fact that as a culture, we have treated a group of our brothers and sisters poorly, you know, and the more that we resist that idea and that reality that has been a truth, then the more difficult this integration and change will be, because the change is going to happen.
No matter what.
Yeah.
And are you in the United States right now?
I am.
Are you
I'm
actually-
in LA. I'm in LA.
Okay, so you're in LA. The big elephant in the room around this that you've spoke about is what's going on specifically in the African American community. I hope that's the right term these days, because as I have no idea. But when we consider I'm Canadian, so both of our countries have major problems in general, holding back Black people, holding back brown people, and even Chinese people and Asian descent people, right? Well,
Right.
both of our countries have generally been very bad at it at a governmental level and at a personal level too. There was a time when I was growing up when it was acceptable in Canada to say Indian. It is no longer acceptable to say that word in any way, shape, or form because it's First Nations. In America, I understand that you guys are still allowed to use that word. When you look at what's happening specifically for, let's face it, we as white men have a history of not being very good when we're put in groups and in charge of things, if that makes sense. How do we start to change what we do and to internalize other people's struggles, so we can never understand them fully, but we can at least try? And where's the beginning of that? Big question. But you kept mentioning stuff, so I wanted a big question in there. Oh,
Sure,
let's promote your book for your site first, and I'll let you collect your thoughts. JeffreyDavis.com is where you can find Jeffrey, and as you can tell from this interview, he's somebody who actually really cares. So please talk to him over there. And Jeffrey, I'll let you answer the question.
Sure. You know, it is similar to what I was saying before on a personal level. Is first you have to recognize and accept what is, and within some of the white community is resistance to what is, which is there is police violence. There is, you know, and people of color experience that on a frequent level. They, on many levels, live in a different United States than we do. And so in order for that change to happen, we need to A, acknowledge that, and B, become voices for what is systemic. Because as white males, you know, in some level, we're born on third base and thinking we hit a third triple for our entire lives, you know, and our brothers and sisters need our voice, and in order for our voice to be tuned into some truth, there needs to be an acceptance of what is, a desire to look at our behavior, our contribution, to educate ourselves through media, through conversations, through without looking at it from resistance. Oh, I don't do that. that's not me, or I have friends that are of this race or that race. I mean, really, it's about a systemic issue, and because of that, I believe that on some level, many of us and probably most of us are blind to bits and pieces of it, and not only to our contribution but also to the experience that other people are having. And therein lies the first step, is becoming aware, and then locking arms with our brothers and sisters and supporting them in any way that they need to, especially with a voice.
I think it's important to understand that this sounds like it's accentuating the problem, but it's also the only way we get past it. The voices that we have, whether we believe it or not, are, if you look at the media, if you look at anything these days, it's getting better, but it's not where it needs to be, right? When 30% or 40% of the population is black, and you look at Hollywood, and there's 1 out of every 100 actors is black. That's a big problem. And 1 out of every 1,000 big movies that come out, it has a lead black actor for the big blockbusters, right? There really hasn't been one other than Will Smith and maybe Denzel, but that's it. And you look at just a sea of white, and I think it's up to everyone to say, yeah, it's time for that stuff to happen. It's time to get these people out in the media, out, or this, I shouldn't say these people, I apologize. But black people in general, out, and everybody who's been marginalized, just get them out there more and more, to really show that we're all the same. And yes, we have differences culturally and economically, but that everyone deserves the same rights as everyone else. Your website, we're at 26 minutes. I do apologize for ranting on there in the final spiel. Your website is jeffdaviscoach.com, correct?
Yes, JEFFERY Davis
Awesome.
Coach.com.
Where else can people find you? Are Instagram, Twitter, any of those places, Facebook, all that stuff?
Facebook, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So the final question I ask all the time is, other than this interview, what's one thing you've done for yourself today? Not for anybody else, but yourself, to make yourself happy.
This morning I got up early and I went for a long walk in nature, and then down by the beach, and on my way back, and it was amazing. It was the medicine I needed today.
I think sometimes we don't give ourselves enough of that. So
yeah,
I do want to thank you for coming on. Everybody, there's links for all his stuff in the description of the video. I'm sure I put it there. And if I haven't already, I will. Jeffrey, I want to thank you for coming on. I honor you for getting your stuff out there and helping others. It is an amazing thing that you are able to do this. So I do want to thank you for coming on.
Jesse, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it. You're a bright light in the world, and thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I'm a below average light, but we'll try. We'll get there.
Hey, keep doing it.
I'm trying. Everybody who's watching or will watch the replay, thank you, Jeffrey. Which do you prefer, Jeff or Jeffrey?
I only go by Jeffrey.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. That's awesome. I'm just weird. I'm weird. Don't worry about it. Anyway, we end the broadcast one way. I just need you to say wave bye to everybody, and I'll end the broadcast.
All right, guys. See ya.
Come on, darling. There. End.